All right, we are back, rested and ready for round two or part two of the double feature. Chris Garlock here with Michael Redmond. Michael, thanks for that game, the AlphaGo 35. Terrific. We're just moving right through the collection. I think we can safely say we'll make it through the end this year, 2020.
Yep, hope so.
All right. All things being equal. A couple of quick things. Just a reminder, folks, the US Go Congress coming up this summer. You can find out about it at usgo.org. Registration is open if you're a Go fan, which is why I assume you're here. Think about if you've been there before, you can talk to everybody else in the chat about how great they are. And if you haven't, then just go ahead and ask. It's a week of Go and Go things and Go people, and it's great stuff. Also, you can go ahead and book your next few Thursdays. We'll be here on this Twitch channel for the next, through the end of the month, actually. Same time, doing 1 to 2 games, depending on how our schedules are. And so you can plan on that. And again, these are released. We try within a week or two to release them on on our YouTube channel. And when we do that, we also release the SGF files with, if Michael, believe it or not, you're not getting the full Michael commentary here. We actually have lots more in the SGF file, lots and lots of comments and variations and all kinds of cool stuff. So you want to check that out. All right. Oh, and remember, of course, you can ask questions, do comments. Michael's going to probably give us some quizzes, and I haven't been doing so well, so I'm probably going to ask you guys for some help. And then there was a question about the AlphaGo book, which we did do some work on over the break, and we had an early group of what we call first readers to take a look at a draft that we had a few months ago, and they had some very good and thoughtful comments, which sent us back to do some more work. I'm hesitant to get pinned down on any specific schedule, but I think we're getting close. Would you agree with that, Michael?
I hope so.
he's even more conservative than I am.
Yeah.
So my argument right now is that, it's an ebook. I think we will probably do a printed one, but it's an ebook. So I think we're close enough where we can release the ebook, and then when you guys look at it and find, some mistake that we made, we'll just, fix it. That's the cool thing about ebooks. So fingers crossed that we'll have that out. We'll have that out soon. All right, so now we're going to have a human-human game, and this is a game by you against Ishu. Is that right? Is that correct?
Ishu. It's probably pronounced more like an L. It's a Chinese name anyway, so I don't really know.
Okay.
But I think that this is the Japanese pronunciation is Ishu, and
Okay.
I think the Chinese pronunciation is very similar. Maybe the I is supposed to be a Y or something. But it's very close to the Ishu, I think.
Okay.
And he's from Taiwan.
From Taiwan. And what do you know about him? And then where was this game played?
This was played in Tokyo. It was in the Oza tournament. And you might recall that fairly recently I showed you a game I played against Otake Hideo.
Yes.
That was the game with the 10,000-year ko in it, that ko in the corner where he was trying to kill my corner group.
I remember it.
Yeah, and it actually happened, the ko. Like usually we don't play those kos because they're not very easy to execute. But we actually got into that final ko there. So after beating Otake, that was actually in the B section of Oza. So there's a B elimination tournament, and then there's an A elimination tournament, and then you finally get into the final stages of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the final game of the B tournament that I'm playing against Ishu. He's an 8 dan in the Japanese system, a very strong player. He's been in the Kisei League once, I think, and he's about 30 years old.
Okay.
Very nice man. Actually, he was more recently, he was my roommate in Singapore when I went to the Singapore Southern Asia Go Congress. We were roommates. Same room in the hotel.
It's a small community in the Go world, isn't it?
That's
Well,
right.
cool. Anything from rooming with him that you can tell us about him that we should?
Well, he's a very quiet person. Yeah.
Okay.
So we didn't get into each other's way. That's all I can say.
Unlike you, who are such a loud partier and rambunctious kind of a fellow.
Well,
I'm kidding. If anybody
trying to get
knows
in trouble,
Michael,
right?
knows it. I know. Is your wife listening? No. Okay. All right. Okay.
Never know.
So, what's the short version of
Okay.
what
You're
happens
going
in
to
this
see
game?
some modern joseki, so stuff that wasn't around before we started studying with computers programs. And I think actually Lee was a bit surprised that I was actually studying with computers. He wasn't up to date on that. So
Interesting.
people usually assume that if you're an older person, you aren't studying with the computer. So maybe he
Right.
was assuming that. And it gets into a fairly dangerous fight towards the end of the game. So it's sort of, in a way, it resembles that game that I was just showing you with AlphaGo versus AlphaGo, because I have this very weak group in the center of the board, and it's sort of hard to tell whether it's going to live or not. And the balance of territory is in the calculation too. So it's
All right.
in that way, it's very similar to AlphaGo in Game 35.
I'm sure
So
I'm sure that you played just like AlphaGo, Michael.
Well, I was the side getting attacked, so I hope I hope I don't. Yes. So we both started with 2 star points because in the AlphaGo game it was Black who got into too much trouble, and I play a Kakari. Again, computer programs will suggest just diving into the 3-3 point directly, but I don't really like to do that very much, and to be honest, it's just a very small difference, so it doesn't really matter that much to me. Like I forget what the percentage difference is, but like when human players can easily lose 10 points in winning percentages with just one move, it's probably not a big deal that I play an opening that I like to play. So white is pincered, and I play another Kakari. And white plays a Kakari here. And the reasoning behind these moves is very difficult to explain. It's just that it would be perfectly reasonable for white to answer normally, for instance, like this. And maybe black would play. Black has a number of options, and I don't really recall what I was planning to do. Black would probably play a double Kakari, or black could just jump into the 3-3 point. Both of these would be feasible. Or black could just continue to build a moyo. Like black could do something like this for a completely different type of game. And I remember that I had some kind of game plan at the time, but I don't really. It's not actually necessary because all of these variations are playable for black. They're
Right.
all feasible. And white plays here. This kind of jumping around, ignoring your opponent's approach moves, is pretty effective, and it's being seen a lot now. And so a lot of these variations are sort of suggested by computer programs, and the human players are sort of just experimenting with them. We don't really fully understand. So this approach is the high approach has become more popular recently. And my opinion on this move is that black wants to have some strength in the lower left area. So what I'm talking about, for instance, actually white played away, but when white gets into this kind of, are you seeing this move that I just played on the board? Maybe I have to steer it. Is it showing on Twitch? Oh, good.
Yeah.
So when white plays something like this, sometimes we can get into this kind of variation. So for instance, this would be a fairly common variation in the corner itself. And if black has nothing on the left side, then next white's going to be attacking black here. So this variation with white pincering on the left side, white is getting an attack going. And the idea is, in this position, I'm going to go through this variation up to a certain point. And maybe at this point, I'm going to be playing a Kakari in the lower right. I mean, the lower left, that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to be starting to build some. And for instance, ideally, I could play this exchange and then move back to the upper side. And now it would be the white group that is sort of isolated. So this is my idea. I'm sort of pushing it when white had the stone in the lower left corner, but I think that I can build on the left side anyway. So my general idea of this move here, black 9, the double Kakari, which is high, when black plays high here, I would like to have ideally a black stone in the lower left corner. But in this position, I think that I can handle that with playing a double Kakari at some point. And as I was showing here, building on the left side. Let's just go through that once more and start building on the left side to make that black group there work as a wall, you might say.
Yeah.
So that was my plan here. And white actually surprised me by playing away once more. And I'm answering this. So I played here. And we're getting into this variation here, which again, it's again the same joseki as we saw earlier today in AlphaGo 35, the AlphaGo self-play game. And in this game, I played the attachment here. So this, for human players, this has become the most popular move. It was seen in some AlphaGo games, and it's very popular with the computer programs now. So like, for instance, Leela, I think, I'm not so sure about Fine Art. I think Fine Art plays this move too.
Mm. Oh, speaking of Leela, there was a question I forgot when we were talking about the AlphaGo book. Really good question about whether you had revisited your earlier commentary. And that actually is exactly what we are doing in this book, is we have Michael's original commentary from the AlphaGo Lee Sedol series. This first volume is just the AlphaGo, the 5 games with AlphaGo Lee Sedol. Michael did commentary on those. And then what he did is he went back and we've left in the original commentary, and Michael has added in new commentary, which is based on his extensive use of Leela. And I got to tell you, it's really educational to see the differences.
Yes,
in some cases, we just put the dates so you can see them. But in some cases, you really kind of change your mind. You have different ideas about stuff now.
Exactly. Well, I started to understand some of the ideas that AlphaGo was having, and the fact that I had Leela to sometimes give me the same answer.
Right.
And so I could actually look at, and with Leela you can dig, you can make variations of your own.
Well, what's fascinating is, I thought was really cool was, considering the fact that you were really, it was really tough when you were doing those original commentaries. We didn't have any of those tools. In fact, I remember you were always complaining. You had to just do all of the heavy lifting yourself. And so, it's still a ton of work even with Leela. But anyway, so the answer is yes. It's really cool, and it's one of the reasons I really want to get it out there, because I think folks are going to really like it.
Yeah, I can remember. I really wanted to ask AlphaGo, but AlphaGo was not equipped to answer me.
Nope.
Right.
Nope.
And so the most popular variation is for white to push through here. For instance, if white plays here, then black's going to cover here. And the cut at N17 and the hana, like if black answers on this side, black can play a hana here. Black is getting a living shape in the corner and has a pincer on the upper side and a pincer on the right side. So these two are going to be miai, or interchangeable points. So white pushes through here, and white is just consolidating the right side group. And white plays an Atari. So up to this point, this is pretty much an established joseki up to this point. Usually white will play the connection in the corner, and black will play an extension. In this board position, this is actually very good for black. This is ideal for black. And in general, I don't really like this connection in the corner, although it is a very big move. It does give black the tempo to play that big move on the side. Black seems to have a very nice position on the upper side. And so in this position, I think it was correct for white to be playing away at this point. And actually, in game 35 for AlphaGo, we saw that If they had played that joseki, then even Leela was suggesting that it would be good for white to play it away at that point. So you could take another look at game 35 and see what I was talking about, because that is in the variations. It's going to be in the variations in the SDF file. It was in the variations that I was showing on in the streaming. So white plays away. I agree with this move completely. Even though white has sort of stopped in the middle of the joseki, I think I agree that it's a good time for white to be going back to the upper left. And extending here towards the center is the move that has become very popular recently. Like white used to, the joseki used to be white pulling back here. Black would probably jump into the 3-3 point. This would be a kind of a standard joseki. Otherwise, black could play on this side, something like this. And then white would be going for the corner territory probably. Both of these are feasible. But it's become very popular for white to play here. The idea is that if black jumps into the 3-3 point now, this actually gives white better shape if we compare to the idea of white having that stone as a connection. It's better for white to be extending here in the center. It's a much better shape for white. And white will continue with the hane in the corner. And actually, it's going to offer a ko here because white has a ko threat at this point. So the white has the option to win this ko in the corner. So this is a variation that is played a lot recently. But I started something that was relatively new. Not unheard of, but it's relatively new. So in the game, okay, I've jumped ahead of the game. Okay, in the game, instead of jumping into the 3-3 point, I connected once here. And white has to find a way, a shape to connect up. This is generally the usual move.
I'm not leaving. I'm just plugging in the computer so we don't have a problem, right?
Oh, okay.
Right back.
You're not going to run out of electricity? And so when white attaches here, it's good for black to jump into the 3-3 point. And so this is the variation that is still a bit rare in human games. It's still a bit unusual in human games, but it's the computer variation. It's the suggested computer variation suggested by Leela a lot, and we're seeing it in some human games now. By the way, this game was played a few months ago. It was let's see if I can give you the date. This game was played at the end of August 29th. And so it was in the middle of my winning streak. It was just about 7 games, but I guess I can call it a winning streak. Jumping into 3-3 point, if white plays here, black can connect it here. Now black has a very good position on the left side. And of course that stone there is not completely dead. White will need another stone to take care of that black stone. And then black can play a double kakari. So this would be satisfying for black. So white blocks black on this side. Black connects. And this is a very interesting point in the joseki, where a human player would be tempted to play a cut on the second line. So where would you cut, Chris?
It's cut on F18, right?
Exactly. You cut on the side that is when it's unlikely that your opponent will capture that stone. Right. So like if black cut in the corner, if white cut in the corner, black would just capture the stone. But even if white cuts on the outside, capturing the stone is not really an option because black would lose the cornerstones. So black connects. Actually, crawling on the second line is an option, but it's probably not so good for white. It's a very confusing variation that I didn't bother to get into. But it's more likely that white's going to play press on from above. Black can crawl a few times and then play on the left side. So this would be okay for black. In fact, I'm calling it good for black in the SDF commentary. It's just one example among a multitude of possible variations. So like in an actual game, you would have to worry about maybe white playing this move gets really exciting, but I'm not going to get into it today. it would be very confusing for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really like to make a lot of variations for the same move.
Yeah, yeah. But I think a lot of people would be tempted to do that.
Yeah. I think my final verdict was it's probably not so good for white, but it's a very close thing. But it turns out that when white does that, just to get back to this position, this exchange here in the corner, this is actually strengthening black on the corner side. And to explain what I'm saying here, I'm going to compare it to the game where white just plays a hane. Now, if white plays the hane here and black covers, then white is going to play something like this immediately with this cut just implied. White's not going to play the cut because it's a cut that white can play at any time. But if black does something to protect, white gets another chance to force from the corner. So that hane at C there on the 1-2 point, the A18 point, is going to be forcing next. So that's the difference, which would not be forcing if white had played that cut at A in exchange for black B. But the fact that white's not played that makes C forcing next, and it's going to give white some extra eye space. Or if black answers with something like this, then it's going to gave white an extra tempo to attack black on the left side. So either way, it's something extra that white gets against the corner, which is going to, in this case, it makes a big difference in white's eye space. Like white is pretty much alive there. Even if black plays later on, if black plays something like this, when white plays here, it's pretty much alive. White's not going to play there immediately, but eventually if white has to live, white could play something like this. And so that's a huge difference. But the intuitive move is definitely to play the cut here. But the computer programs do not play that cut. And it was a bit confusing, but I've decided that it's probably better not to play the cut. And obviously, Ishu has studied this position also because he played the hane here also. And so this was expected. And I happen to know that black is supposed to play a move on the upper side.
Happen to know?
Yeah, well, because I studied the position. I know that black is supposed to play here.
Right.
This is the computer suggested move. It's the move that you're supposed to play. And actually, it was when I went back to study it, it turned out that it was still the best move. Leela actually agreed with me playing this one kakari, but then it still wanted me to play here. In the game, I played the 3-3 point, which lowered my score a bit. So black should have played here.
Wait, so Leela was okay with the kakari, but then go back and play?
Then, yeah, she wanted me to play this move on the upper side.
Uh-huh.
And so looking at the upper side alone, if white plays here, black plays here, black gets a nice territory. 2 and 3 are basically interchangeable. It's no problem if white doesn't play that exchange, but locally this is sort of what one would expect to happen. White can pincer here, but this peep here is actually a bit troublesome for white. Like if white plays, just plays the connection, now these 2 black stones are expendable. So black can throw them away in the case that white follows up with the cut here. And so this might happen. And this is actually fairly good for black. This is okay. A slight advantage. Otherwise, if white hurries to play the cut, for instance with this move, if white hurries to play the cut, now black's going to add a stone here. And again, that 6 and 7, that cut on the second line, has become a bad exchange for white. It's losing points. And it's more important, it's losing eyes for white. White's group does not have perfect eye shape. So when black plays this peep here, it's a kind of a dilemma for white. White doesn't want to cut yet, but when white connects here, the cut is going to lose its value because those 2 stones, after playing this peep here, black has already gained enough that black can afford to sacrifice those 2 stones.
Wow.
The idea is that when this happens, I'm going to mark the exchange. This exchange here is a huge gain for black. So that's the idea here. So the probe there, the peep there, is a move that it's a kind of a move that I would be able to play. It's a human intuitive move, but it's also a very neat move that was also suggested by Leela. So this is what I should have done. In the game, I jumped into the 3-3 point. And white plays here, very natural sequence here. I'm trying to get Sente here with the connection. For instance, if white answers here, which would be a joseki, one of the josekis, I would just play the Hana and connection, and I would be able to, provided white connects, I would be able to play something on the upper side, maybe here. Or I might, I'm not sure what the suggested move is for computer. Maybe I'd play on the left side. So I'm trying to get Sente, and white counters with the Sagari here, an extension downwards. I bump against white once. And actually, this is an opportunity for me to play away. This was my final opportunity to protect the left side, which was probably slightly better. It's a very subtle difference, actually, but it's a completely different game, but it's hard to evaluate. So if I play on the left side, white is going to play the connection here. There's no way for white to kill the corner. For instance, if white plays here, this is actually a live shape. You can find it if you have a book, for instance, called Basic Life and Death or something like that. You'll probably find this shape in it somewhere. Because if white plays here, then black can attach. Or if white plays the monkey jump, black can attach. And black has enough room to live. For instance, with something like that. And at any point, like we could take it a bit further. White tries to take away the eye, but white doesn't have enough liberties. That's just one of the variations. But in any case, there's enough space for black in this corner. And if you don't know this shape, you should probably look it up in your life and death dictionary.
What usually happens is you don't know it and you die, and then you look it up.
Right, yeah. Well, that works too, I guess. So I've made this variation. And again, the whole point here in me saying that I should have played on the upper side at some point is that white 8 here, the pincer on the upper side, is a very effective move for white.
That is severe.
It's a severe. White's going to be able to push black around a bit here. But in this case, I do have the territory. I have the territory in the corner, in both corners, actually, on the left side. And I have the left side also. And in this game, it's going to be relatively difficult for white to use white's thickness because it's not really pointing to any wide areas where white can build territory. And so this is about even slightly better for black, maybe. So I should have played this way, but I didn't. So we're going to go back to the game.
What was your plan?
Well, locally, allowing white to play this move and being forced to live in the corner is a bit painful.
Yeah.
It's a very nice shape for white. And so it's a bit painful, but I had to take that pain to protect the left side. Also, the other thing is that the actual game is not so bad for me. It's not decisively bad. And it's hard to judge which was better. It was hard for me to judge which was better. So I could see that white was about to invade my left side, but I didn't really know whether that was better or the variation was better. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, I knew you had a plan. I was just curious on it, and I mean, it's a little nervous making for me because one doesn't like to be pushed around. But if you got a plan, then that's the plan.
Right. This is a very difficult position where even when I put the question to Leela, there were 4 points here, which were very close in value for white's move. White's pincer could have been any one of these four moves, and all 4 of these will lead to a completely different game. And it wasn't really very clear. I think I probably need to get a better computer. It does have a GPU. It does have an NVIDIA GPU, but maybe
All
I
right,
need to.
all right, folks. There's your cue. Let's get those contributions going so we can get Michael a more powerful computer.
I should try to handle that myself, I think. But anyway, um, it's one of these 4 points is probably White's best move here. Um, and I was feeling that I would be okay with this attachment. And it turns out this was the move that Lila liked too. So I guess it was okay. But there's so many variations here. It's very hard to make it clear what's going to happen. So White played on this side. Maybe slightly better for White to play on this side. So I'm going to show you this variation. White can cover here, and Black will be able to capture the stone here because now Black is threatening a cut here next. So White will answer on this side. And it's a pretty much forced variation. White extends once. Black has 3 ways to capture these stones. Black can curl from underneath, Black can cover on the 3rd line, or Black can play here. This is probably the best move. The drawback being that White gets this forcing move in here. Black does have 2 eyes. And then White's going to play something on the upper side. You can see that Black is in a Black's group will have to play something to live in the corner there, the upper left. So that group is not yet alive. And White is reducing Black's potential on the right side. On the whole, this is slightly better for White. So this is how White should have played. A slight advantage for White. But that didn't happen either. So going back to the game, just a few more moves, I guess. White played this way.
Wow.
And so where does Black play now? I missed another opportunity. Now it's my turn to miss an opportunity.
Hane underneath.
Hane, yeah. Well, that was the move I played, so that was as good as I did.
But it sounds like it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Hane on
the 4th line.
What about the cut? Is the cut doing?
No, the Hane on the 4th line is going to revert to this one.
Yeah. That's right.
Right.
It's a different thing. What about back up?
So this is the correct move, you might say. Again, even if you look at the score, it's going to be a very subtle difference, I think. But White will continue this way, and Black will curl around here. At which point it becomes a bit annoying for White to continue trying to capture those 3 stones in the upper left. So White will switch to this side. And we get to this. It's a very natural variation. I think any pro playing would probably, after cutting, 2 human players would probably end up with this variation anyway. And Black peeps here. And White will probably cut. So if Black connects on the left, White's going to start curling on the 2nd line. And that's going to be bad for Black because Black can't even cut here because that would lose the corner. So this is just bad for Black. Black's going to sacrifice the 2 stones. And this is actually fairly good for Black. So it's just a few percentage points, but like in this fight here on the left side, the game was seesawing back and forth between a very slight advantage for Black and a slight advantage for White, or vice versa, I guess. But this variation would be fairly good for Black, with all of Black's groups alive. You can see Black has a good deal of territory, and this position in the center is unsettled. Like if Black plays somewhere around here next, Black's going to be able to escape. So White doesn't really have any concrete value yet, so it's slightly better for Black. Even though White does have a lot of space in the center, it's not good enough. So I should have cut there, but instead I played the Hane underneath. And White connected. And again, I probably should have played at A here. I considered both moves, but I wanted to get the better eye shape, actually. But I was very lucky here when White played this slack move. I was very happy because this gave me the opportunity white should have played something like this, just switch to the upper
Ooh.
side.
Did you play? Did you play J16?
I played something more exciting.
Ooh.
Well, in this variation, you can see that white is not only getting to the upper side, but 7 it's kind of a double threat because white's threatening black on both. Well, the corner is alive, but it's going to be squeezed. Like if black continues with something like this, white can play here. You can see black has a fairly squeezed position in the corner.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's not much territory.
Oh. So at least it's not dead.
Okay, so we're back to this position. This is where I'm jumping ahead again. This position. This is where I was saying white should have played here. When white plays here, I was very happy to play this peep. And again, this peep is a very important move.
Yeah,
it consolidates the black territory. Yeah. And if white answers it here, as I was saying before, once black gets that exchange in, the value of these stones reduces. Right. So I would be able to play some extension on the upper side. I would just switch to the upper side. And my group on the left side is alive already. So that would be very good. In the game, white extended here. In this case, it's good for me to just leave the 2 stones. Because if I connect on the second line and exchange for this, it does have an adverse effect on my group on the left. In fact, actually, let's make a variation for that. Because if I extend here, it's pretty likely that white will actually play here to give me something to worry about on the left here. Oh, sorry about that. That wasn't what I was going to say. I gave you the wrong variation. Excuse me. So when white plays here, if I connect here, that is, then white's going to play here. And then I have to worry about my left side too. There's some bad odds either. Not quite as alive as it was before. And so I don't really want to play that exchange. It's better for me to play the extension. The extension here, yes.
Right.
So I was happy there. The game is looking fairly good for me now. And white extended. That's another slack move. White probably should have played elsewhere. So I was very happy until I played my next move, and I immediately realized it was bad. This is where I played. And this is actually a big move. It's bigger than you might think, but it was premature. So where do you think I should have played in this position?
I guess I'm feeling like a big move in the right hand. The viewers are sort of agreeing with me. Right, people want to play in the lower right hand side of that seems like an area that it would be good for black. Right. Everything else seems pretty settled.
It's pretty obvious, isn't it?
How did you miss it?
The moment I played this move, I was upset with myself because it's pretty obvious that black should play here. Any move on the right side would work, but this is definitely the best.
That was sort of the most obvious one, right? It's just
maybe something like this would continue, and now black's gonna. Now you see black is going to play here. The left side. It is a big move. It's a big move, but it was just a few moves too early. After playing that big point on the right side, it's big enough to play. So something like this, it would just be an easy game for black.
That feels very, I was going to say that feels really nice for black. Yeah.
I would have, if I had played this way, I would have been very happy. But actually, at this point, I thought I'd thrown the game away. It was a huge loss.
Yeah.
Later on, when I looked at it with Leela, it doesn't seem to be such a disaster. Like I still have a pretty good score at this point, but I was very discouraged, and I continued here. This was my continuation. That was the idea I had. And when my opponent played here, I realized that it's not really working. For instance, if black pushes through here, this is not very. It's not going to be very convincing. It's not really working for black.
Oh.
And so I had a miscalculation there too. It was just I was too hasty to play that move.
It's big. Like you're saying, it's big, but it's just not that urgent, is it?
Right. It's just it's the next move. It's after we finish the opening, because this was an opening point basically that I
Right.
had to play. So it was sort of haphazard there. That this move here also was completely unnecessary.
So that's really interesting. So White made a couple of slack moves, and then
And I just returned the favor.
you
Yeah,
returned the favor. Interesting.
yeah. And so I thought that I'd blown it. Looking at looking at the game with Leela, it doesn't seem to be that bad, but it is putting the game in a great deal of question. And now White is going to build a Moyo from the right side.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
for a human player like myself, it becomes much more difficult for Black to win this game. I think the human viewpoint is quite different from the computer in the way that computers can sometimes give you good scores in a position that is very, very difficult for a human player to finish.
Mhm.
And the computer thinks everything is okay, but for even a 9-dan professional, sometimes it's just impossible to see how to continue that.
But I think one of the things that you're getting at is the big difference with the AI is that you just as soon as you played it you realize it was wrong and you have feelings around that. I mean, you didn't resign and you're not
Right.
giving up, and as you told us, this is part of your winning streak, so we know that you do win in the end. But you have to deal with something the computer looks at and it's like, well, that wasn't great, but it's
Yeah.
we can live with
Yeah.
that.
It just finds the correct answer for the next move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you just need to be more like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, I try. I am human though. Yeah.
Yes, you
Just in
are.
case you forgot. Yeah.
No. That's what we love about you, Michael. Stay
Okay. So
human.
White
Stay
comes out.
human.
Yeah. And this is pretty reasonable play for White. I'm kicking in the corner, just taking some extra territory. And I have an idea that maybe I can eventually make this stone work somehow. So I'm sort of working towards that, but I start with this move.
That's
I
a
start.
cool move. I like that. That's stylish.
Which one?
The
White's
marked
correct,
one.
right?
Yeah,
So I invade the right side,
yeah.
and White plays the strongest reply with this move. So basically, the real threat behind this invasion, I'm not trying. I'm not necessarily trying to live here. If White plays something like this, I'm going to be happy to play uh, to finish off the corner territory with this exchange, and then I would be free to be playing something on the left here. This would reduce the size of White's moyo. So I'm trying to get this exchange in to get rid of the threat of a White invasion here. And of course, it would have been more straightforward, for instance, for me to just do that to start with, but it wouldn't be quite as satisfying. Like when White plays away now, it would be less effective. Or even if White answers here, White has a much better position than in this position where there's still that black stone there getting in the way a little bit. So instead of this variation, I was trying to get to this position. But my opponent countered with the strongest move. I agree with this move that White played.
Oh,
And I
nice.
peeped. So I'm getting a bit crazy here. I think I'm still sort of reacting to my mistake on the left.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that drastic. I am peeping. I'm threatening to cut White. This move is a very interesting way White handled it. So I'm going to show you the reading that White has to back up this move. If Black pushes through, which is the strongest local move, White will push through here, and we get into a semi. This is a threatened ladder here, so Black has to escape. And White 10 is the Tetsuji that wins the semi here. So for instance, this is just one variation, which is not so good for Black. But if Black continues with the cut here, White can always win the semi with this move. And you can see that these are actually, they're all connected. So even if Black connects there, White can connect underneath.
Wow.
So this is, the point is that if White makes a mistake, and instead, let's say White plays when black plays here, if white plays covers on this point, then black can just connect here. And this time, black's going to win the scenario. So that's why white jumps at 10. This jump here is the strategy to win the scenario for white. And there's some variations that would be less disastrous for black. But basically, white is going to win the scenario. You might remember that it does depend on this ladder here. So if the ladder favors black at some point, I could play the Hana here, and it would be a different story. But for the time being, the ladder favors white. And so when white plays this move, I play away. So there is a kind of a potential there for the ladder to get good for black. But with this big wall that white has in the lower left, it's not really all that likely. It's just a kind of a annoyance factor. And white pushes. And at this point, I'm trying to connect up to make this move work in some fashion. So that's my object here. And so when white plays here, I push through and cut. This is threatening to play an Atari here and capture 3 stones on the side. That would be big. So white answers here.
It's getting exciting, isn't it?
And finally, this is going to work. So I was very happy now.
Yeah, I was going to say this has actually worked out well for you after.
Well, the operation was a success. But it turns out that my score after capturing these stones, I was so happy. Like I pulled ahead in territory now. But Leela doesn't like it. Leela telling me that I've fallen behind now.
Oh my God.
And this is actually very similar to the position that we had in that AlphaGo versus AlphaGo game, where black had a lot of territory, but there's this weak group. In this case, it's the black stones on the right, which doesn't really have any way to make 2 eyes. And even if it survives, there's potential for white to catch up in territory.
Right. So this actually raises a question that our viewers are asking, and that goes to what we were just talking about. I mean, you were feeling good. You're feeling pretty happy. Leela is not impressed. So can you just sort of walk us through assessing what's going on with the count right now? Because I think that's a little hard for folks to understand.
Okay. Black has about 20 points on the left side. After capturing those 2 white stones, black has maybe a bit more than 20 points. Black has less than 10 points, like on the lower side. And if we look at the lower left corner, if white gets a stone here, that black territory is going to be about 5 points.
Right.
Otherwise, if black gets to connect up with a move somewhere around here, it's going to jump up to about 10 points. There's a problem with a peep here, which is actually very difficult to calculate because white has a number of ways to follow up after that. That's going to happen towards the end of the game.
Right.
There's a peep here, which is going to give black a lot of trouble in the corner. I'd say that the territory is maybe about equal. The black territory that black's going to get in the territory and the white territory that white's going to get in the process is probably about the same. So in all, I'd say black has maybe komi worth territory looking at the whole left side. That's including the lower left corner. Maybe not quite komi. It's close to komi anyway. So that's a lot of black stones, but not so much territory there. If we look at the upper side, if we assume it's going to be black's territory, it's going to be close to 20 points. But of course, there is some stuff that could happen there. So black has something like 40 points plus komi. And there's no point in counting white's territory. There's no white territory to speak of, really. So it all depends on how white can attack the black group. Potential areas for white are the center of the board, obviously. Or if white can sort of break up the upper side black territory, then white wouldn't have to worry about territory so much. There's some potential that white has. But there's not really any territory to easily count. Like what you could probably add up to about 10 points maybe for white. But that would be it. It's all potential. So white starts with this move, a very calm move. you can see that actually my opponent realizes that he has a good position. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so patient. It's a very patient move, just getting rid of his weaknesses and eyeing the black group. So I play here. This is where objectively A was better. And it's very interesting. Sometimes I sort of subconsciously realized that maybe it's not as good as I thought. Because I'm trying to get something extra here with this.
That's right. That's
A
right.
would be the normal move.
Yeah.
But I guess I was realizing that white would then get some extra potential in the center of the board, and maybe it's not so good after all. So I'm trying to do a little better than that. Trying to take away white's potential in the center. There's also the fact that when I play at A, and something happens in the corner, white will have a lot of the side is not really black's territory yet. And also, if white gets this move in relation to what happens in the corner, then of course it will be very easy for white to take away all of my eyes on the side. So there is the fact that I was sort of reluctant to actually surround the right side as territory, because it's not going to be much territory at all. But I am sort of trying to get something extra here. And objectively, it's probably not the correct move, because white invades here. I have this sequence, which is this is kind of a standard sabaki sequence. Sabaki is what you do when you're in trouble and you're trying to fix your shape inside of your opponent's sphere of influence.
I have to tell you that you just confused everybody, because you told them the game was even, and then you said that black has 40 points and white shouldn't bother counting because he has no territory. So they want to know, how is it even?
Well, you know, territory isn't everything. White has a lot of potential in the center of the board.
But there's your answer, folks. Territory isn't everything. Write that down, people.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of demonstrated by the fact that our computer programs, well, most of them, aren't even capable of telling you what the territory count is.
Thank you.
Now we have Karago, it does tell you, but most of the programs just give you a winning percentage. And so as far as the AlphaGo system is concerned, territory isn't even relevant. It's just the final position.
I like that better. Territory is not relevant. Territory is irrelevant. Take your territory. We don't care.
That said, human players just love to have territory.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We like our cash.
Right. And so I play here. So this is a kind of a very important point in the game where I was thinking that, well, just to give you a variation here, if white breaks through here, then I can cut here. Actually, there's an issue with the cut here. If black gets the cut here, or white has to worry about the right side. If black gets a cut here, then white will probably have to answer that too. If white plays something like this to get a good Aji shape, this is just not enough territory for white. Black is getting a good deal of territory back in the upper side.
Yeah.
This is not going to be good enough for white. And so this is something that I felt that I could have a reasonable game with. So this is what I was aiming at. So if white is not going to do that, obviously, I was thinking white's going to connect at 0.15 right here. So that was what I expected. So, and that was what Leela was showing those two variations too, until Leela got to 10,000 searches, about 10,000 searches.
Oh, wow, that deep.
Well, yeah, that's some people do one more digit, actually. Some people go to 100,000 or more.
Wow.
But when Leela got to 10,000 searches, Leela came up with an amazing move. You want to try to find it?
Oh my God! Really? I'm not going up against.
It took about 10,000 searches.
Wait. Let me crowdsource it. Anybody? Any of you guys got an idea of what Leela came up with in 10,000? Can you give us a hint? Give us point us in the right direction. No, you don't even want to give us a hint.
I don't know how to say it without giving you the answer.
Okay. All right. So black just played here, and white comes up with something amazing.
Okay. So this was the natural way to protect the cut there, and of course white is being put under pressure too. So white does have to deal with the cut. This was the natural way to protect the cut. And this was a more direct attack. Leela found a way to protect against the cut more indirectly.
We have a bunch of guesses out there. I have no idea. I haven't looked at them, so I'll just give them to you. I got a Q12. I got an N16. I got a I17, a J14, another N6. I got two N16s. I don't know. Is anybody close? Is anybody close here?
N16 is exciting, but it's probably not good because white's going to be in trouble here.
Right.
Like in this variation, the cornerstones, white's stones in the corner are in trouble now.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yep.
White does have to deal with the threat. It's just an unbelievable move. Like I still find it amazing. And I'll just show you.
Yeah, just show us.
Because this is Leela's move.
Nice try, guys. Nice try. Whoa! That was exactly what I was thinking.
Well, obviously, black does not have time to cut because if black does something like this, it's an improvement on the previous variation. It's getting much more.
Oh, that is really cool.
That's a very nice squeeze. That's not an option for black. Black probably has to play the bamboo joint. White will connect. And this follow-up, this is actually pretty reasonable. White's trying to do something to deal with the cutting point here. White has to deal with this cutting point in order to be able to attack all out. So first, white's going to play these forcing moves on the upper side. And then white's going to take away black's eye space. White's going to force a little bit more. Now, white does not have to worry about this cut. It's not an issue anymore. For instance, if black cuts here, let's just do that subvariation. If black cuts here, this is just going to spell disaster for black because white has all sorts of ways to do it. But like, for instance, white could do this ladder. That would be the most damaging.
Oh my God! Yeah.
There's just too much happening there.
Wow.
White had a number of getas to choose from too, nets. So black's going to continue here.
So,
but without that cut, this is looking really dangerous for black. I could continue a bit and have black play here, white play here, black play here. Black actually wins the semi, but this is really dangerous. I think it's just dead actually. It's a flower 6 shape. So that's a dead shape.
Oh wow.
So it's a very dangerous situation.
It's like one of your classic life and death problems where the answer is just to give him a big old dead clump of stones.
Yeah. So that's otherwise black could have black could have connected here instead, but that makes it easy for white too. Like white just connects underneath. Or black's best choice is probably to play here and threaten to cover on the second line. But still, black's going to have a lot of trouble making the second eye. It looks very dangerous. So this is probably playable for white. It takes a lot to execute this, but it's dangerous. So this is what Leela came up with. I'm very impressed by it.
Yeah, well, I can see why.
So trying to back up to the game, I went a bit too far. In the game, my opponent just played here. This gives me a lot more space in the center. White gets to play this exchange. I get pressed down on the upper side. But it's a very ambiguous game now. Like Leela is giving white good percentages. But when I looked at it with Katago, Katago is a program that gives you actually point values.
Okay.
It was maybe a couple of points good for white and stuff like that. Like it was going back and forth. But the game is actually going to be very close if both players play correctly here. Curling around here, these moves for white, especially this one here, was a bit slack. It let me off the hook. But I should tell you, both players are in time trouble at this point.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you 2 questions. One was, what was the time situation? And also, you were feeling pretty good at this point, right?
Well, I know I'm still ahead in territory.
Yeah.
I've saved about 20, almost 20 points on the upper side.
Mhm.
So I've retained something like 40 points. But also I know that there's a lot of calculating. I had not completely calculated the lower right corner. I knew the most straightforward way that white would play, which is going to be happening in the game. But otherwise, I was looking at some other moves that white might try. And it was hard to find the correct continuation. I knew it was going to live, but I didn't really know exactly how much territory it had.
Mhm.
And I knew that the game had potential to become very close. Actually, I think Leela was suggesting that white play here. So this is sort of like an attack going for the throat. But it does have potential for white to get a big center in the process. So this was making it easy for me, partly because I was moving out into the center. But also this move was not the move that Leela suggested is much better, which is to play here. Allow white to jump in here, but actually black gets a kind of a squeeze almost. The entire squeeze does not work, but black can back off and make two eyes here. So this would be a relatively easy way for black to live. And white's territory in the center is not so big. It's not so big that black's going to lose. It's going to be a close game. But both Leela and Katago seem to think that black has a slight lead.
Mm.
At this point, with so much open space in the center, a lot depends on how we play out the end game in the center of the board, also in the lower right corner. So at this point, I'm spending my remaining. Well, I'm in overtime already at this point, so I'm just spending my time trying to calculate the variations, and I don't have a clear view of what the territory is going to end up. I know it's going to be close.
And I'm assuming we're going to see this, I assume, but that P3, yeah, there it is. Okay, all right, just I can ask about that.
This is and this is the game move. This is the very natural way for white to continue, and this is how it turns out. White takes a stone in the corner, and black's alive. So this was pretty easy to calculate. This is the easy variation. Actually, it's more difficult to say what black should do when white plays here. This is more troublesome. Black will probably play. Black can play here, or black can play the 3/3 point, and it's not as if black's gonna die, but I think maybe this is slightly better as far as territory is concerned. Something like this could happen. You can see white is getting some territory there, but black also connects up to the corner. Slightly more than 10 points. White has, let's see, white has 6 points there, a gain of 6 points. Black is going to get something like 12, 13 points connecting up to the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's okay. Maybe better for white than the actual game. And this, in this variation, white has 4 or 5 points. Let's see. I'd say white has either 3 points. If black jumps here, white's just going to have 3 points in the corner and it's going to lose a bit on the side. Or if white connects up, white's going to have 6 points. So maybe 4. Maybe I could count 4 points for white there. Black's going to have 7 points with this group in the lower right, and 5 points with the group in. So I'll just show you that in a variation.
Mm-hmm.
So if white plays here, black can live this way. If white connects here, this actually doesn't really work. Black captures all those white stones. White will be able to push the corner around, but actually it turns out that black can just play this forcing move. And if white connects here, this is alive. And so the profit that black got on the right side is too big in this case. So white will not do it that way. But instead we'll use this this forcing move. Sorry. White will use this forcing move. And black has a choice of playing here immediately, or it might actually be better to play this cut first to make a big move next. And white will play here. And this is going to be about 5 points on the lower side, with 7 points in the lower right. So it's about 12 points in all. White has only 3 or 4 points in the corner. So
And this all has to be calculated really fast because you're in overtime.
this was the easy part.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I mean, this variation was the easy variation to calculate. It's the one that I had spent, I'd been thinking about that earlier. And so it was pretty much calculated already as we were playing it. It was this one that was difficult because black has a lot of options. Black has this move, or black could actually play something on this side. They all seem they all work as far as the idea of living. Black can live in either case. But the territorial, this variation, which seems to be the best as far as territory is concerned, it's very difficult to make that decision. So that was the part that I probably would have been a bit confused if my opponent had played that way. And it would have been, objectively, it would have been better for white to play that way. So I was sort of lucky here. So white attacks in the center. At this point, if I had played at A, I think I would have had a small advantage. And like Leela gives black a winning percentage, it's probably just 1 or 2.5 points.
Oh, really?
So I don't really know for sure that I would be able to carry that to the end. Leela thinks that jumping here was a dangerous move. White peeps here. This is threatening the double cut on the upper side, so I answered that here. This is a forcing move. And now white attacks very severely. And it's worth it for white. This is actually taking away one eye from black, this eye. Also, it has some effect on the other eye that black has here. So it's putting a lot of pressure on black's eye space. And so white is playing very strongly here. And the hane here was maybe a questionable move. It would have been simpler for white to play this, go into this variation, just pulling back. And black will push once and play here. This is the variation I worked out. Sometimes, well, obviously I had the help of Leela, but also you have to, sometimes you have to give Leela some help because there's a number of variations that Leela likes that are, it's sort of ambiguous sometimes. In this variation, black can live, but white has a slight, looks like white has a slight advantage in territory when white gets this nice center territory here. Right. So the payoff was that white got this nice shape in the center, creating the perfect territory here.
Right.
So it was, I sort of worked with Leela, with my opinions sort of mixed in with Leela's. I think I got the correct variation here. So this is a slight win for white. Probably 0.5 point or 1.5 points. So it's still, for human players, it would still be in question. But it would be good for white. So in the game, oh, I jumped ahead a bit. In the game, it gets, white played the hane here. So I got the cut. And now white played here, which was the losing move. This move actually helped me fix my shape on the right. And I already have a way to live now. So what white should have done is white should have just saved this stone. And white can escape from the ladder. And this is a move actually that Leela was not finding. But this is the strongest attack that white has. And this has a double effect. It's not only taking away black's eye space, but it's removing the threat of this cut here. The point being that going back a few moves, if black connects here, this is a completely dead shape. So black is sort of obliged to play on this side, which is going to be a ko. In this shape, black can connect at this point, and the players will fight a ko here. So it's going to be a flower viewing ko for white. It's a one-sided ko, and white again will have potential to build a territory in the center of the board. White's going to end up building a territory around here, and it's going to be enough for white to win the game.
Yep. And that's sort of the whole point of the attack is not necessarily to kill, but to make profit while attacking.
So this is actually, so white had two chances here. I think this one is white's better chance because it's much less complicated. But this one also, although it's much more complicated, it still looks good for white. In the game, white played the Atari, and this is just fixing my shape. So now if white, for instance, plays here, I'll probably just play the Atari here. This is just so easy for black to live. Like I'm already alive here. There's still the aji of the cut there. White probably has to protect like that. And now black has a piece of A. So like white cannot now go ahead and make that territory. Like if white plays here, black's going to peep at A. It's too much trouble for white. So that's just not working for white. White doesn't get the same territory in the center. It's not good enough. So he played here, and I get to cut. So you can see white's territory in the center is disappearing. Maybe he miscalculated here, because if white plays here, black just plays the kosumi. And you can see white cannot push through at A. And A is actually a double threat. If white pushes through here, he just gets into trouble. There's the cut here, and the push through here. It's just falling apart.
Oh, man.
And so when black plays here, now if white just simply protects here, black has this move which is threatening white on the right. And so black can easily connect in the center. So in the game, white pulled back. This is just getting very ugly for white. Black plays here. With this Atari here, black already has a living shape. I'll show you later how that Atari works, actually, the game sequence. And I play here. One final interesting point is this move. Because black can connect in the center, but it's going to be a ko. So we're going to have this huge ko in the center. But unfortunately for me, white has local ko threats here. Because you might notice this ko involves the life of white's group also. This white group is not alive. So the ko is very dangerous for white.
Oh, man.
White has local ko threats. And so what I did was I got rid of the local ko threats. This is actually a very big move. I was telling you that black would have something like 12 points there. Now black has something more like 20 points on the lower side. So
Huge.
That's a big territory.
Huge.
And white has no ko threats now. There's no ko threats left for white. And once white plays this move to cut me off in the center, I can easily live with this. So this is the game sequence. And you can see how this stone here is preventing white from wedging here. It's forming a hanging connection when black cuts. So I can show that in the variation. So if white plays here, then black can just cut here. And you can see how this move is making it a real eye. So in the game, white doesn't do that. And we're coming to an end. So black is, I've kept most of my territory. In fact, playing this move, I've even gained some territory. So let's see, I have 20, 40. I have more than 55 points now. And white has not really gained very much. So now I'm probably something like 15 points ahead. Before that is. Yeah.
I mean, that just worked out beautifully for you. And it could not have worked out better if you had, wanted it to. So do you have insight into where, why white went so wrong there? I mean, the answer seems fairly straightforward.
Well, there's so much calculation in this whole fight. And it was just that one move that white played.
Time pressure, maybe?
Time pressure. I think this was such a terrible move. It looked bad. So intuitively, it's a bad move. But I think he was just the accumulated pressure of trying to calculate all these variations for several dozen moves. The whole fight, starting from the right side, maybe he lost his concentration. Maybe just couldn't calculate a winning sequence. But the winning sequence at this point, as I was saying, it's a very complicated sequence.
Sure.
A good time to research this. And I think for white to clearly win, I think it's necessary for white to be able to play this move.
Yeah.
Which, like if white instead plays something like this, it's putting a lot less pressure on black than black would be playing here. It would be a lot easier for black.
Right.
And so it's not a simple variation, but it's probably good for white.
It's a good example for any player of, you know, the importance of time management. I mean, you know, if you're, you know, in endgame and I mean not endgame, but in really complicated fighting situation and you're short on time, it just doesn't give you a lot of leeway
Yes,
to
in
do
this
that.
game, I think we were just having so much calculation in the starting fight, starting from the left side. There was a lot of calculation there, and that fight where I played that attachment underneath here.
Right.
This fight here involved a lot of calculation, and yeah, so I guess it put both of us under time pressure.
Right.
But it was a very exciting game.
A very exciting game. It's wonderful. Quick question before we wrap up. So you won this game. This was the final of the B section for
the B elimination tournament. So this put me in the A elimination tournament, which would be 2 more games before I got to the final stage of the tournament.
Gotcha. Well, congratulations. Well done. That's pretty exciting. These are very exciting games and really fun to see. All right. As always, thank you, Michael. Thanks, everybody, for watching. A couple things. Again, these will be posted on YouTube. I think we've got some games coming from. We'll continue. The Redmond stuff is always posted on Fridays. I think Steven's working on posting some of those games from the Congress that you guys were at recently. I don't know the schedule on those. Make sure you subscribe to the e-journal. If you don't already, you can do that at usgo.org. And we will see you back here, same time, same station next week. Michael, thank you so much. Thanks again to Stephen Hu, and thanks everybody for watching. Take it easy.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.